do.
J'accuse.
Yeah, and some of the other girls would just take it with like crying, or they would just accept it, or they would, but Verna was the only one that got mad about it. And they were like, that's our girl.
Yeah, from then on, we've been using you.
Yeah, it was interesting the way she worded it.
You won.
They were like, we've been using you in the creator's work, which makes it sound better, but also you weren't wrong.
Right, exactly. So now that the Keeper has been, handled, essentially.
The world exists.
Yeah. We're still here, but stuff is kind of screwed up. So now we have to worry about a new problem that affects the fate of everybody here. The old war has been reignited.
Yeah, inadvertently, when Richard saved the world, he also kind of fucked the world, so now we gotta deal with that.
So, yay for being alive.
To be fair, that was kind of happening before he brought the barrier down. Like, the old war has already been started in the old world before this was going on, so it's not necessarily all Richard.
It's kind of the perfect progression for any of this to take because, we spent the first couple of books learning about the world and being like, we value life. I'll be your best friend no matter what. I'll be your best friend if they put a gun in my head. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very values and good and proper, and it's fine. And they save the world. Now that you've proven your love for the world and just how badass and righteous you are, now you got to prove it. Because now we're at war.
Yeah.
So
now we're getting more and more justifications for why you might need to kill somebody.
Right. Good thing you got okay with that in the first book because here we go, buddy.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a caveat to all this. And that's Anne can't tell Verna all of what else is happening because we might fuck up prophecy. You can't risk that. I can't tell you everything. I hope you appreciate the fact that I'm telling you that I can't tell you everything because of a pretty good reason.
Yeah, like your free will has to play into it in a certain degree. If you know that things are supposed to turn out a certain way, you may do things differently than you would otherwise, which may inadvertently fuck everything up.
Yeah, and I mean, we hired you essentially because of you, for who you are. So we want you to do that.
Yes.
Instead of the thing that we spent hundreds of years teaching you how to do.
Well, she left. Hey, so 20, it's a couple hundred minus 20.
That's
all that
Fair.
matters. Yeah.
Couple hundred minus 20. Give or take a decade or two.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Whatever.
So, Jay, then let me ask you a question. Does that mean that if we are planning on this podcast episode going a certain way, right, and we don't take steps to make it go that way, and in fact change it, like do something that we do almost every episode and not do that, we might actually rip a hole in the space-time continuum, thus ending life as it is?
Okay, so I'm going to be clear here. I've never been super clear on all of this, prophecy, free will time, because it's confusing.
Kind of getting no vibes over here.
But yes, I will agree because I want the beer break. So yes.
That's fair.
Yes.
So we should do it then.
Yes.
To be clear.
Yes.
Okay. So tonight from Coopersville Brewing Company, we have Mootella. Mootella. Yeah. Like Nutella, but it's Mootella. It's milk stout with hazelnut and chocolate with lactose. I picture if they come out with this in cans, it's got to have the guy with this one finger up, like stating a fact, something you didn't, with lactose.
Like those 1950s looking cartoons.
Those are fucking awesome. I love that. Now this beer, right? Okay. And here's the thing. This one, 7.6%. Respectable.
Yeah.
2 or 3s, I'll say. You
know?
Yeah,
you could have a few without it knocking you completely on your ass, which is nice.
If that's the gauge. By the way, we never drank that much to where we're like, I was so drunk I fell over. Because if we had, then it would probably end up somewhere on this podcast, and I don't think we'd let that happen.
Yeah, I was trying to think if I've ever actually tipped over, and I haven't. I have a pretty good balance all the time.
You are like a cat when you're drinking. It's pretty amazing.
I tip a lot, but I don't fall.
Weevils wobble, but they don't fall down.
Yep, that's me.
However that goes. Okay, sorry. So anyways, this beer has a very strong hazelnut flavor, but it's not like the coffee creamer. That was important because Jade hates hazelnut coffee creamer.
Yep, hate.
But she didn't hate this. It's super smooth. It smells awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I know the last one, I think we talked about it not having very much smell to it at all.
Yeah.
This one is not the case. It smells straight up like chocolate and hazelnut and everything I love.
But in a good way, because I liked it.
But
yeah.
in a good, no, of course a good way. Those are good things that smell good.
Yeah, I don't know. I have an aversion to hazelnut. Like, I'll be like, okay, maybe it's not so bad, and then I'll get it in a cup, especially with coffee creamer, and I'll be like, no, it's not. It's not good. But this beer was great. I liked it a lot.
So we are going to help ourselves to one more of these delicious beers, and we'll be back right after this.
And we are back. So at this point, Verna is tasked with finding out which sisters are on the side of the light and which have been given over to the Keeper. She has to get this done before the Emperor gets there, and we know that he's coming soon.
On his way.
Yeah, the drums are a drumming. So my thing was that Anne couldn't get this shit done in all of her years there. So yeah, sure, this sounds reasonable.
You got a couple weeks, kid. Go.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah, it seems kind of unfair.
But the reason that they're giving her this timeline is because Jagang is a dreamwalker, at least they believe so. And that lines up with what Verna knows, because Simona was telling her and Warren that Jagang, dreamwalker, shitty stuff, all that. And obviously, we know he actually is. So everything lines up. But Anne lets her know that the only safety that can be found is in the bond to Richard.
That's right. The bond is absolutely essential.
And we know that too. So we're not really going to get into the details about that. Verna is already bonded because she helped Richard do his thing at the end of the last book, which is apparently another of the fucking 15 reasons that Anne had to say the really mean shit to her. Like, at this point, she's given, like, multiple, like, oh yeah, that was why too. Like, I feel like she's just tacking stuff on that at this point. Like, see, it wasn't a bad thing of me.
Or that it had to have been done so badly that it's kind of out of her hands for having done it.
Yeah, it was an ultimate point of multiple things happening. That had to happen, or nothing would have worked out. She had to be a shitbox to her at that point. There was no other options.
Look, you don't understand. I had to be the worst.
Yeah.
I had to be the worst.
Yeah. Here's the list of why. Nathan and Anne have both been bonded to Richard, though, like, forever, too. Because, you know, they saw him when he was a baby and all that shit. Like, they know he's important. So they're like, yeah.
They've been supporters of Richard before Richard was even around.
They are the OG fan club. At this point, Anne's message ends, and she invites Verna to respond to her, saying that she will sit there all night, telling her everything that she can if it will ease Verna's burden. And Verna starts by begging her forgiveness for what she thought of her, because that was intense as fuck, and now she realizes that this was all way harder for her, and she's been being really hard on this lady who has been juggling a lot.
She has been juggling a lot, but I propose that she doesn't necessarily have to apologize for what she thought of Anne, because regardless to what the reasons are, and they may be great reasons, a terrible thing happened to Verna. And she doesn't have to be accepting of it. She doesn't have to be happy about it.
Like, Verna shouldn't be apologizing for how she felt about it. She could maybe apologize for Anne being in that situation that Verna had no fucking control over either. Just, like, to be kind. Like, sorry, that sounds really shitty, but yeah, I agree with you that she doesn't need to apologize for her feelings, because she's justified in those. Like, anybody would feel like, fuck Anne at this point. Even now, after knowing all of that, I'd still be a little bit pissy. Probably.
I'm assuming you would be. Just knowing you and, like, you know.
Thank you. Verna asks how she's supposed to fucking find these SODs, and Anne basically says she has no idea. Some of the people that she thought for sure were evil bitches turned out not to be, and some she thought had her back, like she would trust them every day of the week, turned out to be fucking Sisters of the Dark, so she literally has no advice.
Yeah, she had no idea who was who, and you would think her being the prelate, she might have a little bit more insight, but apparently not. And, oh, by the way, Verna, you must not fail.
Well, I don't know how you expect me to not fucking fail, but okay, I'll give it my best try.
Yep, that's what you gotta do, so get after that. And I'll be over here in the office.
So the reports come up, and just like we thought, Anne had her assistants deal with all of that, and just checked up on them every so often. She'd just like randomly drop in and be like, let me see, and if it wasn't up to her, standard, that's the word. If it wasn't up to her standard, then she would, deal out punishments as she would. But if Verna hadn't been doing the reports, she wouldn't have known about the horses or the gravediggers, so it was good that she was being heavily relied on to do them for the period that she was doing them, but now she should maybe tell people to fucking knock it off and to stop making her do them.
No, you're the prelate. You own that shit. You gotta be up 25-8. Just grinding.
No.
Know what I mean?
She tells her to use her scowl, because she has a good one.
Which I do really like. She's like, fuck no, you're the boss. You ain't doing this.
Yeah.
Make the peons do it.
Anne also assumes, though, that Verna looked into the fact that the bodies were prepared in those winding cloths and shit, but that was a clue she had totally spaced on, and I guess maybe we had too. Like, somebody obviously had wrapped the bodies, and that person had obviously seen the bodies.
That would have been the one person who could have also verified
the bodies.
Like we said, yeah nobody put eyes on them this whole time. They just disappeared, and here they are finished. I think that's about as close as we got to, like, wait a minute, they're already finished.
Was with the gravedigger when he was like, I had to prepare the graves,
right?
The bodies in the winding cloths, and we were like, oh, that makes sense. But before that point, it had never even occurred to anybody. Verna lets Nathan and Anne in on Warren's prophecy, writing out the whole thing to them in the journey book. Anne lets Verna know that although the prophecy is immature, they know for sure she is not the prelate that it mentions, just like Warren told her. Which, I mean, doesn't really answer any questions, it just leads to more, like, how the fuck is there gonna be another prelate? Am I gonna die? That's not good.
I mean, you might. Yeah, but I don't know. This has been mentioned a couple of times. No, it's not you, honey. But it's hard for the reader to assume who else it could be. Like, they had that prelate, now we have this prelate. That prelate's been around for a long time, and the palace is fine. So here's the new one. Or this is, I'm just thinking about this right now for the first time. Or is this Goodkind's way of kind of forcing the reader to accept that just because this prophecy says this thing
doesn't make it true.
Right. It seems imminent and seems like it's going to be effective right now, but you might need to wait just a real cool 300 years before that happens.
I mean, there is a lot of evidence pointing towards it being true. She is the false prelate in a sense. I mean, maybe not even in a sense. We are told that the actual prelate is still alive and that Verna might be the true prelate if Anne dies, but otherwise she's not a real prelate. We know that.
As far as I'm concerned, she has the ring. It's legit.
No, I know, but like in this chapter specifically, they are talking about how she is not the true prelate unless Anne dies. So she's a fucking false prelate, you know? And then on top of that, we have a very imminent threat coming towards the palace currently, and somebody with a sword over on the other side of the world. So there's a lot of things that point to this all being like, a
very bad situation.
I don't know how you guys, but multiple people are saying it now, so she has to take it, and at least, to heart a little bit. Maybe she's gonna die though, so I don't know. I would feel like I was gonna die if it wasn't about me. Nathan immediately freaks out upon hearing about Warren being a fucking legit prophet and wants him out of the palace. Like, he takes the book and you can tell the writing's all different and friends lead and everything. And Anne comes back a little bit more calm, but insistent that Warren has to leave and go into hiding. Verna doesn't want to lose the only person she can trust in the palace, but they make it real fucking clear how dangerous the enemy getting their hands on a prophet is going to be, and she agrees.
Is that